Let's open up the new TVC figure of Clone Commander Rex from the Bad Batch VC317. Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there. Thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. It's always an exciting day for us when we get to add new vintage collection figures to our collection, and today we have Clone Commander Rex. This one is a VC317. The wave containing this figure did show up very briefly last week at a local online retailer here in New Zealand, but it showed up in the middle of the day and was sold out in the blink of an eye. So we thought we might have missed our chance there, but during a local toy store hunt today, we actually stumbled across this one. We weren't sure if they were going to take a little bit longer to reach our mainline toy stores, but very exciting to find this one out in the wild alongside a couple of the other figures from this wave. We're definitely going to be spending some time this week hunting down the rest of the figures, but this one we knew we wanted to get our hands on very quickly. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up very soon, I'll take a closer look at the figure. We'll get him off the backing card so we can check out all of the cool details. But first, let's take one last look at the backing card. For the vintage collection line, we have a pretty standard backing card design, obviously inspired by the original action figures by Kenner in the 70s and 80s, with that iconic racetrack design surrounding the character art here on the front. We have the Star Wars logo at the top with, again, a little bit of an insert racetrack shape surrounding the series logo, which is the Bad Batch. I think it's really interesting that we've skipped over most of the main characters of the Bad Batch and we've jumped all the way through to Rex, who is a supporting character on the show. He's not in every episode. I'm still waiting for Wrecker and Omega in the 3.75-inch action figure line. We've skipped all the way through to Rex, and I think mainly in part he is a popular character, but he generally uses a few pieces of classic Clone Trooper armor, like this one of Phase 1 Clone Trooper from Attack of the Clones that was also released recently. This one is VC309. So I think while Hasbro was at it, it was pretty easy to make a Rex figure while they were at it. I do hope they go back and make us more Bad Batch figures. I need to complete the set. We've got Hunter. We need some more to go with the Bad Batch. But yes, I do really like the art they have used for Rex here from the show. His armor goes through quite a few tweaks, different variations over the years in the different animated series that we have seen him in. So it's nice to see he's got a nice clear image here. Shows off his armor very well. We've got a blue color. You couldn't really choose any other color. Captain Rex, Clone Commander Rex is so synonymous with blue. It's his color. So of course we have it accented here behind the figure, and for his nameplate here, Clone Commander Rex, and we can see this is listed as Bracca Mission, which matches here. Some other version action figures include a soft goods cape, sort of cloak over top. Certainly the Black Series figure has that over the top as well. So I'm hoping that we'll have perhaps a few versions of Captain Clone Commander Rex, Captain Rex. He's such an iconic character. I cannot believe we first met him over 15 years ago in that first Clone Wars animated series. It's really funny to think just how many action figures of Rex that will be out there by now. I really like this backing card from the front. Nice clear bubble. He's got two accessories down here, his clone pistols and his helmet there. Just looking at the underside from here, it looks like this is not a helmet that's going to fit over the face sculpt. It is a removable head, and we're going to swap that on. A little bit anxious about that. I always get anxious pulling parts off my action figures, but it does give us a better shaped and scaled helmet if we don't have to fit it over the head. Sometimes you end up with a too big helmet or a too small head in order to make the scale work. It's really nice to see that we have those two swappable pieces, even if it does make me a little bit anxious pulling them off. On the back, we have a picture here of the backing card from the front with the figure posed in front of it. We can see he's holding his helmet under his arm and his pistols are in his holsters there. This is VC317, and we have a short bio here for Clone Commander Rex. Bracca Mission. Presumed dead at the dawn of the Empire, Rex operates in the shadows. helping any clone brothers who remain separate from the Imperial ranks. So that's giving us a little bit of an updated bio about what Rex is doing during the Bad Batch era, but not too spoilery, which I like. We have the Vintage Collection logo here and a big wall of attention, copyright, barcode, all of that kind of jargon there as well. So that is the backing card. I think it's kind of interesting to see just how far Rex has come, when I think that the very first figure of Rex that I added to my collection was the one from the Clone Wars range. You can see it has the first day of issue sticker there. They've certainly come a long way. I think this is a great improvement. Obviously they are different versions. His armor changes a lot over the course of the animated series, but oh man, I really do like the standardized packaging that we now have. These were such a menace to try and find packaging to put around them if you like putting them in star cases, protective cases around your action figures, if you keep them carded like this one. Obviously with this special sticker, this one was really intriguing and worthwhile keeping carded like this, but they were such a different shape. Now that we've got this very standardized vintage collection packaging, it's great. If you like to keep yours carded, they fit into those very standardized clear plastic bubbles so that you can protect your action figures for years to come. This one's held up pretty well, and it was certainly an interesting design being in the shape of a clone trooper helmet, but this one looks like a toy, and yes it was. It had a launching missile action feature there, but I really do like the packaging here. I think this one's quirky and certainly nostalgic from its era, but I really like seeing the standardized packaging from the Vintage Collection line. Just looks so really nice. We've got such a lovely large picture there of the character as opposed to this kind of little cardboard insert here off to the side. So enough of the packaging. Let's get him off the backing card so we can take a closer look at all of the details of the figure itself. Now I have Clone Commander Rex and his accessories off of the backing card so we can take a closer look at the details. And there is a lot to go over. Rex has a lot of details on his armor. He is by no means a standard clone trooper. He's got all of these accessories like his soft goods kama skirt detail here. He's got a shoulder pauldron up the top, and of course he's got all of these extra tally marks as well as his unique blue coloring here. So lots to check out. One thing I noticed when I got him off of the packaging was this shoulder piece here. It is completely free floating. There is no strap, no attachment holding it in place, so it takes a little bit of adjustment to kind of get it sitting nicely. I get the feeling that if we put the helmet on, it's going to have a little bit of a wider positioning here that's going to hold it in place, but obviously if you're going to be playing with this figure, it's going to float around. If it's going to be on display in your action figure collection, you'll just have to adjust it into the right spot for display. If I turn it around, it can even just pop straight off the figure. That hole is so wide and there's nothing holding it on, so we can actually sort of see the details underneath. So as I mentioned earlier, this has a separate helmet that doesn't actually fit on over. We're going to have to pull this headpiece off and put the helmet on to look at that detail later. But now we can see the shape of the shoulder armor, and I'm just going to very, very quickly bring in the Phase 1 Clone Trooper that also came out recently in the Vintage Collection line, because we can compare the pieces here. And as best I can tell from my eyes, obviously the details like the belt and his soft goods kama and the blue painting add a little bit more extra to it, but predominantly most of the components do appear to be the same as this one from Attack of the Clones here. Different helmet, different face sculpt. Was obviously got his blonde hair compared to the dark hair there, but the chest armor, the shoulder pieces, the arms all look the same. We've got a different belt, looks like the same ab plate, and the legs look the same. We've got a little bit of different painting. Obviously Rex has these blue accent pieces. He doesn't have that darker color sole on the boot there. He is pure white. But I think it's really interesting. Obviously very easy for Hasbro to make this, considering they share so many common pieces. But yes, once you get the shoulder piece, you can really see just how similar these figures are. Certainly, I think if I took off the skirt pieces here, the soft goods, Kama, that would definitely look very, very similar as well. But yes, Clone Troopers obviously are designed to look very similar. No sort of hate to Hasbro there. They're not going to sculpt it differently just for the sake of it. They're designed to look like they are all wearing the same armor. So of course they're going to use the same pieces there. So I do like the face sculpt on this figure. The Bad Batch has a slightly different animation style to those very early sort of Clone Trooper figures. They have refined the animation style since the original Clone Wars. It got a little bit more detailed. Generally, it's supposed to match, but we can see that this is the Bad Batch version because he has a scar in his hair from when he has his sort of Order 66 chip removed out there. This is not a scratch. That is where it sort of leaves a line in his short blonde hair where that chip is removed. We do have a little bit of a line running across the top of the head. That is part of the mold. We can sort of see it over on this side as well. It's very faint, not too eye-catching. On the whole, the paint looks pretty good. This isn't a flat blonde hair. I can sort of see texture, like he's got a very short buzz cut, and it's very yellow, very matching with the blonde hair of the show. And I think it's a pretty good likeness. I can see the clone performer Temuera Morrison's face here. It looks like him. Not quite like Rex appears in the animated series. I think it's kind of a little bit of an interesting blend there. And looking down, we've got some really good Clone Trooper details. I like the proportions of this figure. One thing that I do notice, particularly when comparing this to the standard Clone Trooper, obviously the belt is different, but we have the soft goods of Captain Rex. So we've got a very faint dark blue edging to these panels here. You can just see it. It's a little bit harder to spot against the black because they are very dark blue. We've got those angled corners and we can see that they are sewn. There's a very small stitch line here in the back. So when I first saw this figure carded, I was worried that this codpiece here was a little bit broken. If you kind of look up under, it's a little bit unusual, I know. You can see that there is, when I look underneath, there's actually some cord there that is used to kind of tie the soft goods together at the front. And the knot is positioned just under this codpiece. So it does kind of float forward compared to the plastic underneath. You can kind of see that there is like a notch in the plastic underneath. At first I thought maybe there was like a peg or something that was supposed to kind of connect and press this down, but it really does just kind of float in the front there. So I thought at first maybe that was a bit of a flaw or perhaps a little bit of an oddity, but I think it is because it literally is where the cording detail has actually, they have to tie it in a knot to get those soft goods around the skirt. So it is just pushing that forward. It can't actually connect down because it is in the front there. So I'm definitely going to spend a little bit of time adjusting the belt and getting it just in kind of the right spot. The cording does push this up a little bit depending on how you would sort of position it. I think it's one of those ones where I like that it's soft goods. I think we've got better flexibility, better articulation. It just reads better for this detail. But then we also have the actual technical aspects of attaching soft goods to a plastic figure, which means that this codpiece and belt is sort of pushed up a little bit and further forward because of where they've had to attach it at the front. Overall, it's going to take a little bit of adjustment just to get it sitting quite right, but once you've got it positioned there, I think it looks really good. I like the soft goods on this figure. Sometimes when they use plastic for fabric, it just ends up looking clunky, like Darth Vader's cloak. The soft goods version's so much better. You actually get that fullness and flow rather than the big sort of plastic lump hanging down the back. I really like the blue paintwork that we have here. It's very clean. Very nice tidy stripes down his arms. The figure came out of the packaging with that blue line just expertly lined up. Very nice there and very nicely lined up here. Obviously I'm going to test out the articulation and that's all going to shift very shortly. And I love the fine printing detail we have of Captain Clone Commander Rex's tally marks on his armor here, on his gauntlets, on the back of his hand, and he also has some on his legs as well. Very fine printing. We can see that there as well. So on these ones, they are all painted over the top. It's really fine. I love that. They look a little bit different here because they're painted over the blue, and on here we've got it sort of offset a little bit, and then we've also got black ones. But I really like just how tiny that is. Really impressed with the level of printing they can get on these figures these days, like the faces. Such a great improvement over those ones in years gone by. Because this is the Bad Batch version of Rex, we've got the sort of scoring, that sort of bronze and silver accenting here on the front of his armor, where he's kind of welded things together. We certainly see that, where he has fused two pieces sort of together, because of course he has that sort of different chin, but the original sort of phase 1 visor there. So we've got that same sort of bronze and silver paintwork. I really like the shine of this. It's a true metallic paint shining up there very nicely. We have that same paint echoed here on the chest piece there as well. Very nice. The rest of the legs, pretty standard. It's just white with just the blue on those knees and those tally marks there. There's not much else in the way of paintwork here. We've got some black for the undersuit as expected. All looks pretty tidy. I don't see it really running onto the white parts. That's always a little bit of a frustrating paint floor when sections that aren't supposed to be black or white sort of bleed on to the others. Black and white's just such a contrast. It always shows up very clearly. Overall, very tidy. Because this is such a popular figure for us locally, we didn't really have an option. We spotted one on the store shelf, so that was the one we were going to get. We weren't going to, you know, ponder about it, come back later, see if we could find a better one elsewhere. Nope, he is selling like hotcakes, so of course we're going to grab this one. So very, very happy with the paint job and the details. I was a little bit worried that that was maybe something wrong, but now that I look underneath, there isn't any really other way that they can attach that. So just something, if that's really going to bother you, maybe see the figure in person if you think you want to sort of consider that before you buy. It does kind of sit the belt up a little bit. But we've also got these very nice holsters on the side. Of course, Rex always has his dual clone pistols there. We've got a holster on each side that, according to the back of the backing card, is going to fit his blaster pistols in there very nicely, which we'll check out very soon. So, of course, we've got the standard articulation because we have the ball joint for the head. We're going to test the helmet very quickly soon. And we've got a lot of movement underneath here, so much so that I can actually look up and see the ball joint in there. You can just make it out. There's actually a lot of free space in there. I can really move him around a lot there. Legs. Clone Trooper armor can impact a little bit in terms of movement because we've got the sort of high points at the top of the thighs, but we can rotate there so we can get up just a little bit higher. And I'm expecting pretty standard articulation for the limbs in terms of the knees. You can see that there. Some action figures have the sort of the knee armor attached to the thigh armor, so it hangs down when you bend the knees. Some of them, it sort of has it more attached to the sort of the hinge itself, so it kind of sits there in the middle. This is attached to the lower armor, so we are going to see a little bit more of the articulation when bending the knee. It's a little bit exposed, but it is black on black. It's pretty well blending in there, so it doesn't really stand out as an eyesore or anything like that. We've got a little bit of movement there at the ankles as well. And let's check out his arms. He's got pretty free flowing shoulder bells. We might get a little bit of a, there we go. Okay, so if we go up, we can see that they are rubber and they just bend to shape so that we can still move his arm up, but hard Clone Trooper armor shouldn't really bend like that. We can kind of flick it up and over the shoulder armor, but it looks a little bit odd. It's not really going to sit like that much, so I don't like to raise my figure armor more than about there. Generally speaking, ones with blasters, I generally have their arms kind of down at their sides, and we're going to hold his blaster pistols. Generally, he doesn't use a rifle, so we don't expect this figure to be specifically holding a rifle, a two-handed blaster pistol, but I do like to see, because other standard clone troopers can, so he should have very similar articulation. This elbow's a little bit sticky in terms of kind of getting it in a little bit close, but we've got pretty standard articulation there. That one doesn't want to bend in quite as tightly as the other side, but yes, he's only going to be holding blaster pistols, and we can see that he's got a trigger finger on both hands, which is very important when holding a blaster rifle. Some figures, their sort of right hand, the dominant hand, has a trigger finger, and then the left hand is a simple, more of a C grip for just holding a generic accessory. Rex holds 2 blaster pistols, so I was hoping that we would actually have a trigger finger on his left hand, because that really does help them hold just by getting that finger into the right spot. This arm is a little bit more stiff, I have to say. There we go. Overall, very happy with the articulation. Let's check out his accessories. I'm just going to put his blaster pistol. Now, these are tiny. I'm going to struggle to sort of hold them and not drop them. They are flat black, tiny little clone trooper blasters there. Of course, we have 2 of them. And I'm going to put one of them in his hand. We'll see. Hopefully, these are small. I'm hoping his hand is not going to fight with me too much. So his finger, I think the trigger is actually very small. This is definitely going to take a little bit of wrestling, because his finger is kind of just a little bit crooked. Doesn't sort of want to stick straight into that trigger spot. But he does hold it fairly well, and I can kind of line it up. But it's one of those ones where it's definitely going to take a few minutes getting those very small accessories into just the right spot that you want to for permanent display on your shelf. So if I can get this one in, his fingers do fit, we can get a pretty good grip. I find on figures that have just that C grip, the guns, the blaster pistols kind of sit at an odd angle, because you can't really line them up to their fingers. You can kind of see here, I've got his finger lined up, but it's going to take a little bit of wrestling just to fit in there. These are such small accessories. I'm not entirely sure the finger can actually fit through the little trigger point of the accessory. It's very, very small. If I do get this in better, I will put up a picture. It's definitely going to take a little bit of time to wrestle that, but just very quickly putting them in his hands, he looks pretty good. He looks a little bit more cooler if he's going to hold them up, but very, very good there. I'm just going to take the one in this hand and see how well it's going to fit in the holster down the side. These are such small accessories. Sometimes I worry that when I put them in the holster, it's going to be an absolute mission to get them out. There is no hole on the underside of these. Sometimes that's helpful. You can get like a little toothpick and sort of poke it in the underside to push out the accessory if you get them really wedged in there. But fingers crossed. Okay. Oh, that's a little bit of a tighter fit. There we go. Okay, so that fits in there nicely. And let's see how hard that is to get out. Okay, a little bit of a pull. At least we've got the sort of handle grip here to be able to really pull that out. So not too bad. I'm not too worried about losing that in there. So, okay, now we're, after a little bit of stalling, I'm finally up to the point where I need to pop this head off, and I'm a little bit nervous. I do really like his face sculpt, but there is something so iconic about the Captain Rex helmet. So we can see we've got a black ball joint attachment point there. So I guess I just got to get pulling. Okay, let's see, how hard is this going to be to pull off? Okay, it's on there, very tight, very tight. It's going to take, okay, there we go. Whew. I'm always nervous. I don't want to break my brand new toys. And then we can see the attachment point there. Let's see how well we can get this one back on. I'm going to put his shoulder piece on, because I don't think that's going to fit on over his helmet. Okay, and trying to get these on when those attachment posts want to bend. Okay, phew. Okay, now we've got the helmet on. Okay, now he is looking really cool. Okay. So now I've got his helmet on, we can take a closer look at the details, and I absolutely love the paintwork on this helmet. We've got so many fine details there. His rangefinder does move, and as you can see, mine is just a tiny bit bent towards the helmet. I can kind of flex it, but I don't mind. It's kind of just resting there, but we can move it if we want to. It is articulated, and we can see those little tally marks there. Oh, so tiny. And then on the other side as well. And I really like the metallic paint they've used for his sort of his welded together helmet here, with that face plate and the sort of chin area there. We've got a lovely, nice, tidy blue. Of course, we've got his iconic markings here at the top of his helmet as well. Really nice, tiny little sort of tube stripes here. Nothing on the back. Oh, I forgot to mention we do have some paint apps there on the back of the chest plate. The classic Clone Trooper back is accented with kind of a dark grey and all of those little buttons there. But I think that looks really nice. And as expected, his shoulder pauldron now sits a little bit more flatter and keeps in spot nicely. Really like the blue here. It's a pretty good match for the blue markings on the rest of the figure. Overall, this is a really cool figure. I knew when I saw him sort of, announced as being part of the upcoming assortment, I knew I really wanted him because I wanted to see what Hasbro would do with a new sort of updated version. They've been refining their action figures over the years, and the modern vintage collection figures are just fantastic. Been having so much fun uncarding these figures recently. Really liking the details of this figure. I think he looks really cool. And this codpiece, it doesn't catch my eye quite as much when I get everything all together there. It does float out a little bit, but when I'm just looking at the figure, obviously the main focal point is going to be his helmet. Looks really, really cool. I really hope we get more of the Bad Batch in the vintage collection line. I really want to see what they're going to do, because Clone Force 99 has really unique armor in terms of all of the details with that dark grey and dark red coloring. I think it'll be really fun, and he's going to be a little bit on his lonesome in my action figure display. He's going to be standing next to some other Clone Troopers because I don't have that many to add and really build up a whole Bad Batch display. He's going to be by himself. So Hasbro needs to make some more Bad Batch figures from the vintage collection line. Really happy to have Clone Commander Rex though. So very, very lucky to find this guy out in the wild after we missed out on that very, very limited online drop at our local online retailer. So exciting. Always really fun when you get a new figure that you're excited about, you've been waiting to get, you finally find him, you get him home, and he's awesome. I had a lot of fun unboxing this one. Some really cool details there. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars Vintage Collection action figure and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a TVC fan, I've recently opened the Darth Vader figure, VC317. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as our whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.